So let's just jump into it. In my final project, I combined my hobby of rock climbing with the technical information behind belay devices to determine if Crag, Kentucky Rock, and Adventure Guides are using the safest device they could, or if there's maybe a different device that could be doing that job a little bit better. First thing you need to understand is what is a belay device. Picture to the right of the screen is a Petzl Reverso. It's just a standard tube style belay device. Denoted that because of the two aluminum tubes right there. Essentially the goal of a belay device while rock climbing is to stop a fall by creating friction points in the device. As long as the device does that, the device works. Additional features can make the device work better or worse depending on how the features are implemented. But in order to really determine what Crag's needs are, I need to figure out who Crag is and what type of devices they use and their customer bases. Secondly, I need to figure out how the hazards of climbing are interrelated to the belay process and how a more hazardous fall could potentially lead or be saved by the right device. Finally, I need to review review a few different belay devices, including the ones used by Crag, to determine if those devices are the safest or if there's maybe one that's a little bit better for the job. First things first though, Crag employs two different belay devices. The first is the original ATC, created about 30 years ago. It's this device right here. It's kind of just a bare bones tube style device, aluminum construction, but it doesn't have any of the additional features that the Petzl Reverso does. This device is used by all Crag customers who are relatively inexperienced, new to outdoor climbing, and then the Crag guides all use the Petzl Gree. So moving forward, there's a little bit more information I need to pick up from Crag. I need to figure out how many guides they have and what the ratio between guides and customers are, and then how many climbs they do with those customers per day are. Moving on to section 2, first, this is the Petzl Gree right there. It's a little bit bulkier, but it's got an auto camming feature inside the belay device that really make it safer than any other device. But the belay, in the belay process, there's 4 different aspects that really make a safe climbing system. We're not really focused with 3 of them. It's really just the first aspect of a proper belay system that we're going to focus on during this report. You need an attentive belayer and the right device in order to safely arrest any fall. While certain falls can never be arrested, falls that maybe cut the rope because of sharp rock, those things are just out of our hands. So we're trying to focus in this report on things we can control. And so keeping that in mind, the wrong device in the right hands is just as unsafe as the wrong device in the wrong hands. So what that basically means is, like, no matter how well you're trained on belaying, if you're using the wrong device, you're still climbing unsafely. When we get a little bit into the physics behind climbing, it's really just an energy balancing equation, but there's 2 things you need to really keep in mind. It's the climber's weight, which is, as the higher you go, the more the weight's going to be a factor, and then the fall factor, which is just the distance of the fall divided by the distance of available rope. So if you look at the first fall, the climber falls from here to here, which is 2 meters, but he falls below the anchor point. So he actually falls for a distance of 4 meters, but there's 2, 4, 6, 8, there's 10 meters of available rope. So it's 10 meters of rope that can really reduce the tension in the fall. So this fall would actually create a fall factor of 0.4. Fall factors happen between 0 and 2, with 2 being the most severe fall factor. If you look on the next slide, the Petzl Gree is actually the only belay device that can safely arrest a fall factor of 2, whereas the ATC can only arrest a fall factor of 1.4. Once you get beyond that, there's just too many kilonewtons applied to the belay device for the belay device to work properly. At that point, the rope sort of starts to slip, and then the climber will essentially fall even further because of just the ineptitude of that device. In section 3, which is really kind of my methods section of the report, I needed to really discover a standard metric to hold all belay devices accountable for. There's really no standard industry metric to measure all devices, and so companies like Black Diamond and Petzl have created their own metrics for in-house, but there's no safety standard for devices across the board. So with that in mind, I went with the UIAA 2018 braking device standards. They broke it down into two different standards for two different styles. The tube style, which as we talked earlier is the ATC Guide, and the Petzl Reverso. Those are all tube style devices. They need to meet the certain standard of like holding a specific amount of weight on a static load, so that'd be a load that doesn't move. And then the assisted braking devices, like the Petzl Grigri, those need to meet the tube style standards and the assisted braking standards. So once I had really determined to follow through with UIAA, with only using UIAA approved devices, I limited my choices to the Petzl Grigri, the ATC Guide, and the ATC Pilot. And I compared these four devices with each other. But moving forward, there's a little bit more work I need to do. I need to compare them and create a graphic really rating each device on the 5 most important parts of climbing: the catch and bite of the belay device, the auto blocking feature of the belay device, how well the device feeds slack, the weight, and then the lowering and rappelling of that belay device. And then in order to really kind of fully complete the methods section, I need to add a little bit more product reviews from customers on these belay devices. Future work I need to do is I need to find more situations where belay devices and errors or failures are compared in outdoor settings. If you look on this slide, I found a study done in 2012 in gyms where a group of people went through 12 European climbing gyms, and they observed over 360 climbers using a variety of different belay devices. And with those, they determined how often an error would happen using a specific device. So if we look at the tube style devices, which is just every single tube style device that is in use, it's got a rating from A error to E error, with A error being the most severe error, that if this were to happen at all, then a fall would happen. So it would be something like not having a carabiner attached to the rope in the tube. And then an E error, if that were to happen, then no fall and no consequences of that error would actually happen at all. That'd be something like forgetting to check to see if your partner's harness is double backed. And so as you can see, the errors are the same for both the Petzl, Grigri, and tube style devices, but a major difference is that the B errors in the tube style devices are a lot more frequent than in the Petzl Grigri. This just kind of builds that idea that the Grigri not only is a safer device, but instills a little bit of a safer procedure with that device, and it's in general just a safer climbing experience. With this slide, it's just essentially the Gantt report. I've completed everything up until the final draft. I still have to restructure my method section and then conduct my final report presentation, which is happening right now. I need to review feedback from my full report, which I'm supposed to get on Sunday, and then I need to expand on the UIAA belay device metrics. I really didn't go into that much detail with that. It's a lot to really give in an 8-minute report. But in conclusion, I've pretty much completed a crag overview and the hazards of climbing, and then a review of the different belay devices. But I still need to figure out more error device frequency, how the UIA fall factor ratings and metrics work with belay devices, and then I need to find the crag ratios between climbers and guides. Thanks.